So that's a big change that's from the book to the movie. Very interesting, right? Hey everybody, my name is Nick. I'm a director living in Taiwan, and today I want to talk about one of my favorite films of all time, Raise the Red Lantern, directed by Zhang Yimou. I brought this film up in a previous video, which you can watch, and I just wanted to, in this video, discuss my interpretation of the meaning of the film. So I want to, talk a little bit about the symbolism and what I think the director was trying to convey with this film. It's just my interpretation of what I think the film is about, what it means. So if you disagree, please let me know in the comments. I am all for having robust arguments about great classic films. So, let me know if you think I'm totally off base. First, let me introduce the plot of the film. So the film is set in the 1920s during the warlord era in China. A 19-year-old girl named Song Lian, who is educated but from a poor family, gets sold into a wealthy family, and she is forced to move there and become his fourth wife. So he already has 3 previous wives, and she is number 4. When she arrives there, she is treated very well. She's given foot rubs and basically treated like a queen on her first night, and a red lantern is raised above the door of her house. What she soon comes to realize is that this is the practice that is done when the master is going to be spending the night with you. So it's not all the time that you get pampered like this. So a power struggle is developed among all the wives for the affection of the master, because they want the good special treatment. They want the red lantern raised above their apartments. Because I think this is actually a kind of veiled criticism of power dynamics in the Chinese Communist Party. Now, why do I say this? So the most obvious kind of symbolism that I think you can talk about is the red lantern. So a red lantern is raised above the house, the place that the wife is when she has been giving favor. So this is kind of like the favor of the party. Now, each wife, I believe, there's 4 of them, they represent kind of different classes in society in China at the time of the revolution. So I believe that the wife Song Lian is kind of like the proletariat. So her coming into the household is kind of like her coming into power. So that's kind of what the revolution was, right? So Song Lian has come from nothing, this poor kind of rural house, to come into this wealthy household. So she's finally got some kind of power, right? And so then you have the third wife, which is Mei Shan, and she is a former opera singer. So she kind of represents, I believe, like the artists. She's very well spoken. She's very clever. She plays mahjong all the time. She likes fun. She likes drinking. She loves to sing. She sings very well. She's very beautiful, right? So she's kind of the art. Then you have Zhou Yan, who is the very, very polite, very nice. She immediately befriends Song Lian when she comes in. And I kind of believe she represents kind of like the army, which I know it sounds weird because she's like the polite one, but she is also very sneaky, it was revealed in the film. And I think this is kind of like the way that the army kind of, was always scheming and conniving and trying to use the proletariat, the working class people, to do things for them. That's just what I think. And then you have the top wife, Yuru, who is basically I think is like the government, and she kind of sets all the rules. She's the one who says like, okay, every night we have to eat together, all this kind of stuff, and she's the one who everybody kind of goes to try and get what they want. And then you have a final character in the film who is the servant of Song Lian, and I believe she represents the peasantry, so like the farming class. She's like the lowest on the list. So she's not even a wife. She has basically no power. She's just a servant. She serves Song Lian, the proletariat. Those are kind of what I think what the characters represent. They all represent these different kind of classes in this film. What is the reason I feel like that? I think that these different people represent these different classes. So firstly, Song Lian as the proletariat, right? She comes into this household, and it is later revealed that the reason that the Master Chen is taking this wife is because his previous wife he has killed. She's done something wrong, and he has actually killed her. He executed her. Now, to me, this is kind of like the idea of a revolution, right? In order for the working class to rise up, there was a lot of violence that occurred. And so this is kind of the this is kind of the trade-off, the devil's bargain that people made to get their power, is that in order to get their power, there needed to be this violence. And I think that is, and this is unsettling to Song Lian, Gong Li's character. And I think this is something that's true about when you really you think that this revolution is this romantic, wonderful thing, but you have to realize that this is built on a foundation of violence. And her coming to that realization is a very prominent part of this film. So her coming to the realization that in order for her to get her position of power, somebody needed to die, right? That is a very prominent part of this film. Then you have the peasant, the servant of Song Lian, Yaner. The reason I believe she is representative of this class is because she believed that she was going to become the wife. So when the other wife was killed, she believed that she was going to be the one that Master Chem gave this to. But instead, this new person came in. So the peasants, if you look at Chinese history, the peasants were promised a lot by Mao. Mao, he said, oh yeah, you guys are going to have all this power. And it was a big way that he was able to get to kind of have the revolution. But in the end, the peasants were kind of left behind. And if you look at something like the Great Leap Forward, you'll see that. Like during the Great Leap Forward, like the peasantry, they're normally farmers, they were told, okay, you guys are going to make steel, right? And by making this steel, they ended up not farming, and a lot of people starved and a lot of people died. A lot of peasants died. And so I think this really shows how they were kind of promised all these things, and then they were left behind. And I think that's kind of the point of Yaner's character, is she believes that she's going to get this position of power, but in the end she's left behind. There's a scene where all of her red lanterns are burned in front of her, and basically that's like the party being like, yeah, you get nothing. To me, this represents a great leap forward. Like their promises and what they thought they were going to get ends up being totally destroyed. And then you have Mei-san, right? She is the artist character. And I think this is the most interesting thing. This is the most interesting part of the film. This is the part of the film that I believe Zhang Yimou is really trying to drive home. She, as the artist, ends up having an affair with the doctor, right? So to me, this is kind of like a representation of the arts and the intellectual classes. And what ends up happening is that Song Lian ends up revealing to the second wife that this affair is happening, and she betrays her and tells the master, and the artist, Mei-san, the opera singer, she ends up getting killed, just like the other wife, the previous wife who we don't meet. So this to me is the Cultural Revolution. The working class ends up betraying the artist class and the intellectual class, and the army ends up kind of trying to manipulate the situation and put all the blame onto these two people, onto these types of people, these classes of people, and they end up suffering as a result. A couple other reasons that I think this is the case, and not just because she's an artist that I think this is the case. I think this is also the case because at the very end of the film, Song Lian goes crazy as a result of what she's done. She's so guilty that she ends up going crazy, and she's wandering around, and she ends up dressing in her school uniform, wandering around the grounds, right? So she's dressed up like a school, like somebody in university. And who are the people that were used to enact the Cultural Revolution? A lot of them were young people, a lot of them were students. And they committed a lot of the violence against the artists and the intellectuals, professors, people that they decided were bad people. They weren't good revolutionaries or counter-revolutionaries. They punished them. And so to me, I think that's really the symbolism that he's going for, is talking about the Cultural Revolution. Another reason I think this is if you look at Zhang Yimou's work, in the future, he makes the movie To Live, right? And the movie To Live has a lot of criticism of the Cultural Revolution, and it's more overt. And that movie got banned in China because it was too critical of the Chinese government, right? So I think you can see that Zhang Yimou definitely has these feelings about the Cultural Revolution within him. It's just in this film, it's more kind of disguised. But then the interesting thing you might be asking is, well, if you look into this movie, you realize that it's based on a book called Wives and Concubines. So all of this stuff I'm saying, oh, Zhang Yimou wanted to say this, say that. Well, you can say, no, that's ridiculous because this is a remake of a book, so he's just remaking a book, and maybe the author of the book wanted to say this and that, but Zhang Yimou didn't want to say any of that. But I do think that if you look into the differences between the book and the movie, some very interesting things pop up that kind of support what I'm trying to say here. And one of the major differences, the big major difference, is that the lanterns are not as prominent within the book. So in the movie version, the red lanterns become this bigger deal. That makes me really kind of think this is an overt kind of pointing to the Communist Party. I mean, red is the color of the party, right? So why would he change that and bring that out, draw that symbolism out? He wanted to draw out the symbolism of the red, of the favor of the party, right? So that's a big change that's from the book to the movie. Very interesting, right? Another big change is that in the book, the setting is described as being like very bucolic, like lots of plants. There's like lots of kind of greenery. It's like, it's a beautiful place. In the movie, it's filmed as being very cold. You know, it's a lot of kind of rock and gray. And this, to me, is kind of like a representation of the way that communism kind of changed kind of the cultural landscape changes the cultural landscape of a country, right? It makes it more gray. Art is stripped down to be more bare. You know, like aesthetics are not important anymore. And I think this is an interesting design choice for him to make. You know, why wouldn't he want to make it more beautiful and kind of scenic when he's shooting the film? And why would he want to make it more gray and cold and unfeeling? Interesting, right? And then the final difference, and I think it's also an important one, is that in the book, the affair that happens between the opera singer and the doctor is not revealed by the Songer, by the proletariat. It is found out by the husband and she's killed, right? But this very important plot point, I think, is kind of the crux of my whole reason for thinking that this is about this issue, right? The idea of the classes fighting against each other and betraying each other within the Communist Party is all kind of built around this plot point of the proletariat attacking the artist class, which is kind of what happened during the Cultural Revolution. These young I keep saying proletariat, but what I really mean is kind of like the young workers or the young members of the Communist Party who didn't have power before and then they got power. So, you know, I use the word proletariat, but I'm not really like a communist scholar person, so I don't really know. So if you think I'm wrong, then whatever, write that in the comments too. So yeah, so those are the main reasons why I think that this is what Zhang Yimou is trying to say. If you agree, if you disagree, let me know in the comments. If you like this video and want to see me do more like movies explained type things, then please let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.